So once again, as we get into a cycle, I wanted to show you really how complex it really is. So this is showing all of the different kind of modifications to these compounds that we know about, and how all of the products of the citric acid cycle get produced. So you can see the pyruvate entering here and then going through the cycle, and you'll see carbon dioxide is getting released every once in a while. You have your NADHs, you have your ATPs, and so on and so forth. So we do have a simplified version that we're going to be working off of. Okay, so this cuts out a lot of the names and the just hits the highlights of this. Okay, so you can see pyruvate entering here. And then all of the different processes that it goes through in order to release as much energy as possible, and also its carbon dioxides. So in the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle, you have two different energy carrying molecules that are going to be created. You have your NADH, which we've already talked about, and then also your FADH2. You also have an intermediate molecule, okay, that enters the Krebs cycle. So the pyruvate comes into kind of the precursor to the Krebs cycle and immediately loses a carbon. So that is lost as a carbon dioxide. And then what's left, those two carbons that are left from that pyruvate, bind with something called coenzyme A. And then that complex is what's actually going to enter into the citric acid cycle. You will eventually produce citric acid, hence where the name comes from, which is a 6-carbon molecule, which is formed by a 4-carbon molecule that's already in the cycle, and the coenzyme A molecule, the CoA molecule. Citric acid will then get broken down. You're going to release a carbon dioxide and also produce an NADH. And then that 5-carbon molecule is also going to be broken down again, releasing another carbon dioxide. So we have hit 3 now, and also releasing NADH and ATP. Okay, so we've released a carbon dioxide when the pyruvate turned into this 2-carbon molecule here. We released another one when citric acid was broken down. And now we've released our 3rd when the 5-carbon molecule is broken down. So you might be thinking, okay, but the equation says that we're releasing 6, not 3. But you have to remember these come from a single 3-carbon molecule, while glucose, which starts all of this, is a 6-carbon molecule. So you will also go through this cycle twice per glucose. And then finally that 4-carbon molecule is rearranged to reproduce the 4-carbon molecule that will bind to the coenzyme A complex. So we're going to start looking at this step by step now. So the pyruvate, which comes out of glycolysis, gets broken down before the Krebs cycle even starts. Okay. So we have our pyruvate here, which is the 3 carbons. Okay, it's going to release a carbon that will be picked up by an oxygen and produce carbon dioxide. Okay, you're also going to have an NAD plus come in and pick up some of that energy and release as an NADH. Okay, so you may remember me talking about the anaerobic and aerobic processes at the beginning of this section, and I said that the Krebs cycle is anaerobic, so it doesn't actually need oxygen. But the funny thing is that if it doesn't have oxygen, it'll actually get backed up. Okay, so if there's no oxygen present, the Krebs cycle will actually shut down pretty quickly. And that's because of what comes after the Krebs cycle. Just wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit. Okay, so after the pyruvate is broken down, this is actually part 2 here, okay? The 2 carbons that are left over from the pyruvate are now going to bind onto something called coenzyme A, okay? And that complex is actually what's going to enter into the Krebs cycle. So you can see this, well, it's kind of here where this happens. So you have your 2-carbon molecule bonded to the coenzyme A, and then you have the 4-carbon molecule that's already in the citric acid cycle. And the coenzyme A is really just there to facilitate the binding between these 2 carbons and these 4 carbons. Okay, so you're going to have the coenzyme A complex binds to a 4-carbon molecule that's already in the Krebs cycle. The coenzyme A is actually released from that to go back and help start off another round of this cycle. And then you're going to have the 6-carbon molecule that results from this is going to be citric acid. Okay, and again, this is a much simplified process. There's a lot more steps involved in there that we just don't need to go into that much detail at the moment for that. So citric acid, you've got your 6-carbon molecule citric acid, and it's going to get broken down into a 5-carbon molecule. So again, you're going to have NAD plus come in and basically mug the citric acid for energy, okay, so that it can make itself into an NADH. And in that process, it also runs off with a carbon that gets made into carbon dioxide. Okay, sneeze, so give me one sec. Okay, so now we have released a total of 2 carbon dioxides at this point. One when pyruvate went down to 2 carbons, and now our citric acid went down to 5 carbons. We've also produced 2 NADHs. Okay, so again, we're going to have this 5-carbon molecule get kind of hit again. Can't really seem to escape the NADH, just rifling through its pockets for spare energy. And again, it's going to release another NADH and another carbon dioxide. This one is slightly different though, because it also releases an ATP. Okay, so we have up to this point, we've released all 3 carbon dioxides, so we're back down to 4 carbons. Okay, it's a different 4-carbon molecule than the original one, so we are going to have to rearrange it again. Okay, but now we've released 3 NADHs and an ATP. So we've got a lot of energy kind of building up as products from the citric acid cycle here. And so finally, this 4-carbon molecule that we just created is going to rearrange itself. Okay, so it doesn't really rearrange itself, but you have a lot more steps that go in here where this 4-carbon molecule will get rearranged into the original 4-carbon molecule. Okay, and this actually will release quite a bit of energy. So you're going to release another NADH, and you're also releasing an FADH2. Okay, so both of those are high energy molecules that are going to go into the electron transport chain. And that is the Krebs cycle. So the summary here, 2-pyruvate are used to produce, okay, now remember this is 2-pyruvate. What we've just been looking at was 1, because you only need 1 pyruvate to go through the cycle of the Krebs cycle once, but you're going to get 2 pyruvate out of every glucose. So basically for 1 glucose, you produce 2 pyruvate, and then those 2 pyruvates are used to produce 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 2 molecules of ATP, 8 molecules of NADH, which will go into the electron transport chain, and 2 molecules of FADH2, which will also go into the electron transport chain. And that is the first part of cellular respiration, or the first 2 parts.